Welcome, guys. Nice to have you here today. We've got Iain Atkinson, our Associate Director for Property and Construction. So he's just going to give us a bit of insight into how the market's recovering post-COVID, if we can call it post-COVID. So yeah, just to get a bit of insight from Iain as to how the market is recovering and where we're going. So Iain, do you want to give us just a bit of your insight into where the market is just now?
Yeah, I think the market's been really challenging over the last 6 months, obviously with sites shutting down and then reopening at the back end of June, and obviously having to be COVID compliant and safety. But also there's been the issue of, I suppose, dormant property portfolios and the lack of access to those. Therefore, from a maintenance perspective and from a facilities perspective, that's been fairly difficult. There are, however, there are definitely pockets of opportunity, and I think some of the sites that were open before, and programs and projects that were going ahead are all moving again, and certainly the development pipeline for large infrastructure projects on the public sector side still seem to be fairly buoyant, as does the housing marketplace, which is encouraging.
That's good. Is something like the government's infrastructure plan, the 24 billion proposed plan, I suppose, is that something that will help?
I think that's a really positive plan. It is a draft infrastructure investment plan as it stands at the minute. But I think, looking at decarbonisation, the stimulus to the green economy, and looking at healthcare and education in terms of how they develop those property portfolios, I think is positive. And I think, therefore, the contractors and consultants that are aligned to large public sector frameworks or can work on those projects will definitely see I suppose a continuation of workload, because obviously there's been a trend in the last number of years to really focus on those areas as well, which is good.
And I suppose in a post-COVID world where everybody's kind of looking at that balanced working arrangement where you're part-time in the office, is there still enough demand, or is there the supply there to fill the demand for offices in likes of Glasgow and so on?
Yeah, I think Glasgow, certainly there was a report came out yesterday from Savills, so they were looking at the lack of supply in Glasgow, and I think that definitely is an issue. And I think there's been a lot of chat about the death of the office as we know it.
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting. I don't think certainly offices will certainly not die. I think it's about that blended use and flexible space and how organisations choose to work moving forward across home working and offices. But I think there'll definitely be a need for good office accommodation, but I think it needs to be flexible to work accordingly for different uses across different organisations. So, but I think Glasgow, certainly there is looking forward, there's definitely a lack of supply for Grade A office space. I think Edinburgh's not too far behind that, but there are a number of commercial office schemes coming through in Glasgow, albeit I suppose there'll be funding challenges attached to those now as a result of the pandemic, but hopefully they'll continue to move forward, and that will certainly help to ease that issue.
And as we all exist in our home offices as it is just now, that demand for better connectivity, is that something that's going to drive some kind of infrastructure programs, I suppose, across the country?
Yeah, I think Scottish Futures Trust and also the Catapult are looking at connectivity at the minute and looking at, I suppose everybody thinks about 5G, and that's probably because we live in the city or in the surrounding areas, but I think it's also about basic levels of 4G across all parts of Scotland, across the Highlands and the Islands as well. So I think connectivity is a really interesting issue at the minute, and I think it's been accelerated because of the fact that we're all now home working, and I think also then when you look at connectivity, you have to look at infrastructure beyond that, and looking at rail and road investment. And I know certainly there's been a number of large schemes being approved from finance being approved down in England, and I suppose the key thing will be whether that trend, I suppose, continues up in Scotland. There's been quite a lot of significant investment over the last number of years in Scotland within rail and road infrastructure, but that whole connectivity piece is certainly high up on the agenda at the minute at government level.
And just to get people, I suppose, on that first run to get themselves into their first home, I noticed that there's the First Home Fund is coming to an end, but I think they're going to extend that. Is that right?
Yeah, so there was an announcement last week, certainly I saw it from Homes for Scotland, made an announcement that it was being extended. I think they anticipate that it will be about 8,000 first-time buyers that will have benefited from the scheme so far, but that'll be extended into next year, which is really good, because I think having a stimulus at that sort of bottom end of or lower end of the marketplace just feeds the chain moving forward. And I think certainly there's also encouraging signs across affordable housing, with a number of the RSLs certainly continuing to develop and build new accommodation, which I think is really needed certainly across the major cities within Scotland.
No, definitely. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully we'll catch up next month and find out how the industry's going.
Thanks, you. Take care.
Cheers.